John Cena had always enjoyed getting away from the chaos of his busy life. The fame, the spotlight, the never-ending schedule. Sometimes it all became too much. That's why he decided to take a break and go on a solo hiking trip through the vast desert. The wide open spaces and quiet surroundings offered him the perfect escape. It was an unusually warm afternoon as he trekked across the sandy dunes, the desert stretching out before him like an endless sea of golden earth. The heat was intense, but Cena was used to it. He had been on numerous adventures and knew how to handle himself in the wild. His body was strong from years of training, and his mind was sharp, focused on the moment. As he made his way over a rise, something caught his eye. It was a cactus. Nothing unusual about that, except this one looked different. While most of the cacti in the desert were tall and spiny, this one had a curious lump growing on its side. It wasn't the typical growth you'd expect from a cactus. The lump seemed almost too perfect, like something had been carefully placed there. Cena squinted, trying to make sense of it. Could it be some kind of mutation, a rare anomaly? His curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to investigate. He had no idea what it was, but it was something that intrigued him. As he approached the cactus, he noticed its size. It wasn't particularly large, but the lump made it stand out. The plant's base was sturdy, and the surface of the cactus appeared rough with the typical thorny spines. He reached down to feel the lump with his gloved hand. It was hard, almost like stone, but it had a strange texture that felt unnatural. It wasn't part of the cactus itself. It was something that had attached to it. He took a moment to step back and look at the surroundings. The desert was silent, save for the occasional rustle of the wind. He felt a slight shiver run down his spine, but he pushed the feeling away. It was just a cactus, right? But the more he looked at it, the more his curiosity grew. There was something about the way the lump sat on the cactus that didn't sit right. He had to know what was inside. Without much thought, he pulled out his pocket knife. Cena had always carried it with him during his trips into the wild. It was his tool for survival, but today it was going to serve a different purpose. He examined the cactus again, making sure the lump wasn't hiding anything dangerous. He wasn't expecting to find anything harmful, but he knew better than to be reckless in the desert. With a steady hand, he pressed the knife to the cactus's skin and began to cut into the lump. The initial cut was smooth, but as he sliced deeper, something strange happened. A thick, clear liquid started to ooze from the wound. It wasn't like the typical sap or moisture you'd find inside a cactus. This liquid was different. It was viscous, almost gel-like, and it shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Cena paused, a mix of intrigue and caution rising within him. He wiped the liquid off his knife and took a closer look. The lump was now open, revealing a hollow core inside the cactus. But it wasn't empty. Instead, there was something inside, something that caught the light in an almost unnatural way. The liquid wasn't just glowing. It was pulsing with a soft golden hue. Cena's heart rate picked up. He had seen a lot of unusual things in his life, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He knelt down, his face just inches from the glowing substance. It was unlike anything he had expected to find in the desert. What kind of cactus produced something like this? Was this natural, or was it something entirely different? A mixture of excitement and caution raced through him. He didn't know whether to run or to investigate further. For a moment, he simply stared at the golden liquid, mesmerized by the way it shimmered. The pulsating glow reminded him of something from a science fiction movie, not something you'd find in the harsh reality of the desert. He had to know what it was. But before he could act, a strange thought crept into his mind. Had he made a mistake? What if disturbing this cactus was the wrong thing to do? Just then, a gust of wind blew through the desert, and Cena looked up. The air seemed to shift around him, and the sound of the wind felt different, thicker, almost charged with energy. He shook off the strange feeling, reminding himself that he was simply in the desert. But his instincts told him that this discovery was something far beyond what he had imagined. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, a sudden movement from behind him caught his attention. He turned quickly, his hand instinctively moving to his side where he kept a small emergency pack. But before he could even process what was happening, a figure emerged from the shimmering heat waves of the desert. The man was tall, his skin tanned from years of exposure to the harsh sun. He wore loose-fitting desert clothing, a wide-brimmed hat shielding his face from the sun. The stranger's eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but his presence was undeniable. He stood there for a moment, silently observing Cena. That cactus, the man finally said, his voice low but carrying an air of authority. You shouldn't have cut it open. Cena raised an eyebrow, not entirely sure how to react. He was used to being the one doing the talking, not someone else giving him advice, but the man's tone was serious, almost too serious to ignore. I didn't expect to find anything like this, Cena replied, gesturing toward the glowing liquid. I thought it was just a weird lump. But this is something else. The stranger stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the cactus. There was an odd look in his gaze, something that told Cena this man knew far more than he was letting on. It's not just a cactus, the man said. It's a relic, a part of the land's history, one that should not be disturbed. That liquid inside, it's not something you want to mess with. Cena frowned, not sure whether the man was warning him out of caution or some deeper knowledge. What are you talking about? Cena asked, now intrigued by the stranger's words. The man glanced around, his gaze shifting nervously as if expecting someone else to appear. There's a legend, he began, his voice lower now. A legend about this cactus, one that's been passed down through generations. It's said that the cactus holds a power that can change things, but it's not a power you want to control, not unless you're prepared to face what comes with it. Cena listened intently, his curiosity growing. He had heard of local legends before, but something about the way the man spoke made him take it more seriously than he usually would. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy Cena couldn't quite explain. I didn't come here looking for trouble, Cena said. I just wanted a break. But now that I've found this, I don't know what to do with it. The man's expression softened slightly, but his caution remained. The cactus isn't just any plant. It's tied to the land, to something older than us. It has its own rules. If you've disturbed it, you may have just set something in motion. Cena took a step back, his hand still resting on the knife, unsure whether to slice deeper or leave it alone. There was a sense of unease now, something that made him question whether he should have cut open the cactus in the first place. The stranger studied him for a moment, then nodded. You may not believe me, but the truth is you've already started something. What you do next will decide whether you can put it back the way it was, or if you'll have to face the consequences of disturbing the balance. Cena stood there, unsure of what to make of it all. The stranger's words hung in the air like an omen, and for the first time in a long while, Cena wasn't sure what to do next. The strange man's warning lingered in Cena's mind as he stood by the cactus, his heart racing. He had not expected this. What was once just an interesting find now felt like something much bigger, and the weight of that realization began to settle on him. His hand still hovered near the knife, unsure of what to do next. He was used to facing challenges, but this was something different. The man was silent, his eyes scanning the horizon as if he was waiting for something or someone. Cena wasn't sure whether to trust him or brush him off, but the way the man spoke, with such certainty and fear, made Cena wonder if there was more to this than just a bizarre cactus. So, what exactly is this thing? Cena asked, trying to push the unease out of his voice. Is it really some kind of relic? The stranger looked at him, his sunglasses hiding his eyes, but the seriousness in his voice was unmistakable. It's not just a relic. It's a symbol of something much older, something the land has protected for centuries. People have tried to exploit it before, and every time something went wrong. Cena raised an eyebrow. What went wrong? The man hesitated, as if unsure whether he should continue, but finally he spoke. People who disturbed the cactus tried to take the power within. They disappeared. Some say they vanished, others say they were cursed. But one thing is clear, they never returned the same. The cactus doesn't like being tampered with. A chill ran down Cena's spine, and he glanced back at the glowing liquid inside the cactus. His instincts told him that there was more to the stranger's story than a mere warning. This wasn't just a tale to scare people off. There was something real at play here. I don't want any trouble, Cena said, his voice steady. I'm just passing through. I didn't mean to disturb anything. The stranger seemed to soften at his words, but there was still a guarded look in his eyes. Sometimes you don't mean to disturb something, but it's disturbed anyway. He took a step closer to Cena, lowering his voice. The question now is, can you undo what's been done? Cena looked at the cactus again, the golden liquid pulsing gently with an almost hypnotic rhythm. He didn't know how, but something about the scene felt wrong. He felt connected to it, like it was calling out to him. Or maybe it was just the weirdness of the situation that was making him feel this way. Either way, he knew he had to figure out what was going on. So what now? Cena asked, turning his attention back to the stranger. How do I fix this? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for Cena to follow him, leading him a few steps away from the cactus. They stopped in the shade of a large rock, and the man looked around once more before speaking. There's a place deep in the desert, he began. It's hidden, almost impossible to find unless you know exactly where to look. A place where people have gone to learn about the cactus, about its true power. Some say it's an ancient temple, while others believe it's the heart of the desert itself. Either way, it's where the answers lie. Cena crossed his arms, skeptical. You want me to go all the way out there to learn about this cactus? And what? Hope I find some ancient magic that will make everything okay? The stranger didn't flinch at Cena's sarcasm. Instead, he nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. The cactus isn't just a plant. It's tied to something bigger than you can imagine. Something that holds the balance of this land. If it's disturbed, there's no telling what could happen next. Cena frowned. The idea of heading deeper into the desert to an unknown location felt like a dangerous move. But what other choice did he have? He had already cut open the cactus, exposed its contents, and now he had to deal with the consequences. And the stranger seemed to know more about it than anyone else. Maybe he was the key to understanding what had just happened. After a moment of silence, Cena finally spoke. All right, I'll go with you. But if this is some kind of trick or if we're just going deeper into danger... The stranger held up his hand, cutting him off. It's not a trick. I'm not here to cause trouble. But if we don't act quickly, things could get worse. Cena gave him a long look, then nodded. Lead the way. The stranger started walking, and Cena followed, his thoughts racing. What had he gotten himself into? He had never been one to believe in curses or ancient power. But it was different. There was something about the cactus that made him uneasy, something that couldn't be explained away by logic or reason. As they walked, the desert seemed to grow quieter, almost too quiet. The wind, which had been relentless just moments before, now seemed to have stopped. The air felt heavier, as though the very atmosphere had changed since the cactus was disturbed. Cena couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting. He glanced around, but the desert was as vast and empty as ever. The stranger led him to a narrow path that cut through the dunes, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. The further they walked, the more the desert began to change. The sand became harder, the ground more solid, as if they were heading toward something deeper within the earth. Cena could feel the temperature rising, but it wasn't unbearable. In fact, it was almost comfortable, a strange contrast to the harsh desert heat he had just experienced. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, the sun dipping lower in the sky. Cena didn't mind the quiet. He had been on enough long hikes to know that sometimes the best way to clear your mind was to let the world around you speak for itself. But today was different. Today, every step felt charged with an energy he couldn't quite understand. Finally, they reached a rocky outcrop that seemed to come out of nowhere, rising sharply from the flat desert floor. The stranger stopped and pointed up at the cliffside. This is it, he said. The entrance to the temple. Cena stared at the rock face. There was nothing obvious about it. No doors, no markings, just a smooth surface that blended in with the rest of the desert. But the man didn't hesitate. He moved to the base of the cliff and pressed a hand against the stone. To Cena's surprise, the ground beneath their feet shifted, and the rocks began to move, revealing a hidden entrance. Follow me, the man said, stepping into the opening. Cena took a deep breath and followed, unsure of what he was walking into. But at this point, there was no turning back. Whatever the answers were, they were here, deep in the desert, waiting to be discovered. As they descended into the darkness, Cena couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something much bigger. Whatever was inside this hidden place, he had to face it, and only then would he understand the true power of the cactus, and what had been unleashed by his curiosity. The descent into the hidden temple felt like stepping into another world. Cena followed the stranger through the narrow passage, the ground beneath their feet solid but uneven. The further they walked, the darker it became, with only the faintest light filtering through cracks in the stone. Cena could hear his own breathing, the sound of his boots against the ground, but there was an eerie silence that seemed to surround them. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of ancient earth. The stranger moved ahead without hesitation, as if he had walked this path 1,000 times. Cena, on the other hand, was more cautious. He kept his hand near the small pack at his side, his instincts telling him to stay alert. He had no idea what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. He had just stepped into something much bigger than he had anticipated. After what felt like an eternity of walking, they reached a chamber. It was vast, the ceiling stretching far above them, the walls covered in intricate carvings and symbols that Cena couldn't quite decipher. The flickering light from the stranger's lantern cast long shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere that was both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The man stopped at the center of the room, his eyes scanning the area as if searching for something. Cena paused beside him, taking in the sight. There was a large stone altar at the far end of the room, surrounded by ancient-looking artifacts. The altar was positioned directly beneath a circular opening in the ceiling, where the light from the outside world barely filtered through. It was as if this place had been waiting for someone like Cena, to find it. "This is where the answers lie," the stranger said, his voice low and reverent. Cena looked around, his mind racing. What kind of answers? What did this have to do with the cactus and the glowing liquid that he had uncovered? He wanted to ask more questions, but something about the atmosphere made him hold back. There was a sense of gravity here, a weight in the air that made him feel like speaking out of turn would somehow disturb the ancient silence. The stranger took a step forward, his hand reaching out toward a stone pedestal at the center of the altar. Upon it sat a small, unassuming object, an orb about the size of a grapefruit. It was made of an opaque material, and as the stranger's fingers brushed against it, a soft glow emanated from the orb, casting a warm light around the room. "This," the man said, "is the key." Cena stepped closer, intrigued by the orb's glow. "The key to what?" The stranger turned to him, his face more serious than ever. "The cactus. The power inside it. Everything. This orb is connected to it, tied to the very heart of this land. The cactus is just a conduit, a way to harness that power. But it's only a part of the puzzle. The real force is here, hidden for centuries." Cena's mind was spinning. The orb was tied to the cactus, and it had been hidden for centuries? He tried to process what the man was saying, but the information was overwhelming. "Why haven't people found this place before?" Cena asked. "Why keep it hidden?" The stranger looked at him, his expression somber. "Because some things are better left undisturbed. There are forces in this world that people shouldn't try to control. This power, the energy tied to the land, it can heal or destroy. It's not something anyone should mess with unless they fully understand it. And the truth is, most people don't." Cena thought about the glowing liquid he had discovered inside the cactus. Could it really be tied to this orb? Was that the power the stranger spoke of? "How does it work?" Cena asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do we use it?" The stranger hesitated before answering. "We don't use it. Not unless it's absolutely necessary." Cena frowned. "What do you mean?" The man turned to face him fully, his expression filled with a quiet intensity. "The energy inside this orb, inside the cactus, is not meant to be controlled by anyone. It was hidden for a reason. People have tried to tap into it before, and every time something has gone wrong. It's not a power you can just wield. It has its own rules." Cena's confusion deepened. "But why are we here then? If it's not meant to be controlled, what are we supposed to do with it?" The stranger's gaze softened, and he let out a long breath. "We don't have a choice anymore. The cactus has already been disturbed. The energy it holds is now loose, and it's only a matter of time before its effects are felt." Cena felt a knot form in his stomach. He had been hoping to learn something that would offer him a way out of this situation. But instead, the stranger was telling him that there was no easy fix. They had already set something in motion, and now they had to face the consequences. "So what happens now?" Cena asked. "Is there any way to put it back?" The stranger's eyes darkened. "There may be a way, but it won't be easy. And it may be too late." Cena felt the weight of the stranger's words settle on him. He had hoped that by coming here, he would find answers, find some way to reverse what he had done. But now it seemed like the situation was far more complicated than he could have imagined. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. It was a subtle shake at first, but it quickly grew more intense. The walls of the chamber began to rumble, and dust fell from the ceiling. Cena grabbed onto the stone altar to steady himself as the tremors increased in strength. The stranger's expression turned grim. "It's starting," the man muttered. Cena felt his heart race. "What's happening?" The stranger's voice was low, almost a whisper. "The balance is shifting. The power has been disturbed, and now it's reacting. We don't have much time." Before Cena could respond, the chamber was suddenly plunged into darkness. The soft glow of the orb disappeared, leaving only the faintest outlines of the room visible in the blackness. Cena's pulse quickened as he heard the sound of shifting stone from all directions. "What's going on?" Cena shouted. The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward the center of the room, his hand outstretched. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, like the earth itself was groaning in pain. Suddenly, a bright light erupted from the altar, and the orb began to glow with an intense golden radiance. Cena shielded his eyes from the blinding light. As the glow grew brighter, he could feel the temperature in the room rise. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the heat became almost unbearable, and then, as quickly as it had started, the light disappeared, leaving behind an eerie silence. Cena slowly opened his eyes, trying to adjust to the darkness once more. The chamber had returned to its previous state, but something was different. The air felt charged, thick with energy, and he could sense that the room was alive, as if it was waiting for something or someone. "What just happened?" Cena asked, his voice shaking. The stranger turned to him, his face pale. "The power has been awakened. Now we need to find a way to contain it before it consumes us all." Cena's mind raced. The power inside the orb, the energy tied to the cactus, it was all real. And now it seemed like they were running out of time. The silence that followed the bright flash of light was almost deafening. Cena stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The air felt heavy, thick with an energy that seemed to pulse around him. It was as if the temple itself was alive, watching them, waiting for something. The stranger's voice broke the stillness, but it was strained, his words filled with urgency. "We don't have much time. The power that's been awakened is unstable. It's already starting to react, and if we don't do something soon, it will destroy everything." Cena's mind was racing. Destroy everything? How was that even possible? The power from the cactus, from the orb, he had no idea what kind of force they were dealing with. The stranger had mentioned before that the energy could heal or destroy, but now it seemed like they were on the brink of something catastrophic. "Okay, so what do we do?" Cena asked, his voice steady despite the growing tension inside him. "How do we stop this?" The stranger moved quickly toward the altar, his eyes focused on the glowing orb. He stood there for a moment, staring at it as if trying to gather his thoughts. Cena stepped forward, unsure of what to expect. "The key to controlling the power is balance," the man said, his voice low and steady. "But balance is fragile. It's not something that can just be forced. It has to be done in the right way, or else the energy will spiral out of control." Cena took a step closer, the mystery of it all consuming him. "What do you mean, balance?" The stranger turned to him, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "The cactus, the orb, it's all tied to the land. The energy flows through the earth itself, through every living thing. But it's not just a power that can be controlled by one person. It requires a harmony, a connection between the earth and the person who holds the power." Cena shook his head. "So what? You're saying we need to find some kind of balance between us and the energy? How do we do that?" The stranger nodded. "Exactly. The power is connected to this land, to the desert itself, but it's not something that can be harnessed without respect. If you try to force it, it will consume you. That's why the temple exists, to protect the energy and keep it from falling into the wrong hands." Cena looked around the room, his eyes taking in the carvings on the walls, the symbols etched into the stone. It was clear that this place was ancient, filled with knowledge and power. But it was also clear that whatever was hidden here, whatever power the orb contained, it was not something to be taken lightly. "Then how do we connect with it?" Cena asked, his mind still trying to process the gravity of the situation. The stranger motioned to the orb. "It starts with the orb. It's the conduit, the link between the power and the person who can control it. But to use it, to tap into its true potential, you need to understand its nature. You need to understand the land, its history, its energy." Cena looked at the orb, its soft glow pulsing in time with his heartbeat. It was beautiful, but it was also intimidating. The more he looked at it, the more he felt like it was calling to him, urging him to take action. "Okay," Cena said, trying to steady his nerves. "So what do we do now?" The stranger moved toward the altar again, his eyes locked on the orb. "We need to perform the ceremony. It's the only way to restore balance and contain the power. But the ceremony isn't something you can just rush through. It requires patience, focus, and most importantly, respect for the energy we're dealing with." Cena didn't like the sound of that. Patience and focus weren't exactly his strong suits. He was used to tackling problems head-on, solving them through action, not ceremony. But the look on the stranger's face told him that this was no time for shortcuts. If they didn't do this right, they could lose control of the energy, and that could be disastrous. "What do I need to do?" Cena asked, his voice steady, though his mind was still reeling from everything that had happened. The stranger glanced at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of resolve and concern. "You need to place your hands on the orb, close your eyes, and focus. Let the energy flow through you, but don't try to control it. Let it guide you, show you what it needs. The land will speak to you if you listen carefully." Cena frowned. "Listen to the land? How do I even do that?" The stranger's expression softened as if he understood Cena's doubts. "It's not about hearing voices, Cena. It's about feeling the connection, understanding the balance that exists between the earth, the energy, and you. It's something that can't be explained. It has to be experienced." Cena took a deep breath and walked over to the altar, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been one for meditation or spiritual practices, but something about the stranger's words struck a chord with him. He wasn't sure what he was about to do, but he knew he had no other choice. The fate of the land, and perhaps his own, depended on it. He knelt before the altar and placed his hands on the orb. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of warmth flowed through him. It was as if the earth itself was reaching up to meet him, connecting with his very being. The energy was powerful, overwhelming, and yet it felt familiar. It felt like something he had known all his life, something he was meant to tap into. His breath caught in his throat as the orb's glow intensified, its light filling the room with a warm golden hue. The energy surged through him, and he felt his mind expand, as if the world itself was opening up before him. He could feel the land, the desert, its heartbeat pulsing in time with his own. It was as if the very essence of the earth was speaking to him, guiding him, showing him its secrets. But just as quickly as it began, the feeling of connection started to fade. Cena gasped, his heart racing as the orb's glow began to dim. The energy was slipping away, and with it, the sense of balance that had been building. He had to hold on, he had to focus. The stranger shouted, snapping Cena back to reality. "Don't fight it. Let it flow through you." Cena's breath quickened, but he did as the man instructed. He stopped trying to control the energy and instead allowed it to guide him, to show him the path. It was difficult, almost like trying to catch a fleeting dream, but he pushed through, holding on to the connection he felt with the land. The warmth intensified once again, flooding his senses. And this time it didn't fade. The energy flowed freely through him, and he could feel the power of the desert, its ancient rhythms, its quiet strength, all coming together in a perfect harmony. For a brief moment, Cena was no longer just a man standing in a temple. He was part of the land itself, part of the energy that pulsed through the earth. He understood now. He understood the balance, the respect that was required to harness this power. And in that moment, he knew what he had to do. The power within the orb surged one last time, then settled into a calm, steady rhythm. Cena slowly opened his eyes, his hands still resting on the orb. The room was filled with a sense of peace, the air lighter, the energy now contained. The stranger stepped forward, a look of awe on his face. "You did it." Cena nodded, exhausted but relieved. The ceremony had worked. The balance had been restored, and the power was no longer a threat. But even as the calm settled over him, he knew that their journey wasn't over. There were still questions to be answered, still mysteries to uncover. But for now, at least, the danger had passed. The room was quiet, and Cena could feel the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on him. The energy from the orb had calmed, but there was still a lingering sense of awe in the air. He slowly pulled his hands away from the orb and stood up, his legs feeling shaky as if they weren't quite sure what to do with the sudden release of tension. The stranger, who had watched him carefully throughout the process, stepped forward, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You did it," he said quietly, almost as if he couldn't believe it. Cena took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He didn't feel like he had done anything extraordinary, but he knew that what had just happened was far from normal. The connection he had felt with the land, the energy, he couldn't explain it, but it was as if he had been part of something much larger than himself. "Is it over?" Cena asked, his voice still a little hoarse. He glanced around, half expecting something else to happen. The orb had lost its intense glow, and the room seemed to have settled back into its ancient stillness. but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. The stranger's face softened. Not yet. The energy is contained, yes, but there's still much to understand. The balance you've restored is fragile. The land is watching, waiting. We must ensure that this power doesn't slip from our grasp again. Cena nodded. He understood. They had stabilized the power for now, but the responsibility of keeping it under control weighed heavily on him. He had thought the challenge was simply about finding the answers, but now he realized it was about maintaining the delicate balance between human control and the land's ancient energy. So what happens now? Cena asked, looking at the stranger with a mix of curiosity and concern. Do we just leave? Is there more to do? The stranger paused, looking around the chamber as if weighing his options. There is always more to do, he said finally, but for now we need to return to the surface. The temple is safe for the moment, and we've done what we came here to do. But the energy we've contained, the power, it's still part of the world outside. And as long as it's out there, it's not fully under control. Cena frowned. So we can't just walk away from this? There's no way to fully lock it away? The stranger shook his head slowly. There are forces that are beyond anyone's ability to control completely. The best we can do is keep it in balance. Protect it, learn from it, but never exploit it. Cena didn't like that answer. He was used to solving problems, to fixing things, but this was something that couldn't be fixed with brute force or sheer will. The energy they had contained wasn't something that could be locked away and forgotten. It was part of the land itself, part of the earth's ancient pulse. The two of them walked in silence for a while back through the narrow passage that led to the surface. Cena could feel the weight of the temple, the years of secrets hidden within its walls pressing on him. They had unlocked something powerful, but what would they do with it? What did it mean for the future? As they emerged into the desert sunlight, the heat hit him immediately. The stark contrast between the cool darkness of the temple and the scorching desert was almost overwhelming. Cena squinted against the light, looking out over the barren landscape. It seemed so ordinary from here, nothing like the hidden world they had just left behind. The stranger turned to face him, his expression somber. The land is patient, he said. It has waited for centuries, but it won't wait forever. Cena wasn't sure what the man meant by that, but he could sense the gravity in his words. There was something deeper at play here, something tied to the land itself. The energy they had contained wasn't just a force to be used. It was a living thing, part of the very fabric of the earth. We've done what we could, the stranger said, breaking the silence. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Cena didn't reply right away. He felt the weight of those words. What kind of beginning was the stranger talking about? What lay ahead for them? Now that the power of the cactus and the orb had been awakened. We need to be careful, the stranger added, as if reading Cena's thoughts. The energy we've contained is volatile. It's a force that cannot be controlled by one person. It will take all of us working together to keep it in balance. We can't let greed or fear drive us. If we do, we'll lose everything. Cena nodded slowly, his mind still spinning. The power they had encountered wasn't just something to be feared. It was something that needed respect. The stranger was right, this was far from over. There were lessons to be learned, dangers to be faced, and decisions to be made. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. Cena knew that much for sure. But in that moment, as he stood in the desert with the stranger, he also knew that he had a part to play in this. Whether he was ready for it or not, the energy of the land had chosen him, and there was no turning back now. As they made their way back toward the distant horizon, Cena couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure was only just beginning. There were more secrets to uncover, more challenges to face, and more mysteries to solve. But for the first time since he had stumbled upon that strange cactus, Cena felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just a man lost in the desert anymore. He was part of something much larger, a force that tied the earth, the land, and its power together. And whatever lay ahead, he knew he had to face it head-on. The desert stretched out before him, endless and full of unknowns. But for the first time in a long while, Cena didn't feel lost. He felt ready,